Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's webinar. I'm Rebecca Roberts. I am the curator of programming at Planet Word. We are a new museum of words and language in Washington, D.C. That's it in my Zoom background. If you're a Planet Word member and that's how you found out about this, thank you. Thank you so much for that support. The museum is free and we want to keep it free, and membership is a key way we want to do that. Another way you can support the museum is by buying tonight's book through our bookshop.org link. A percentage of those proceeds do go to us. You can see the link in the chat. If you want to support your local indie bookstore, which of course we are all for, we are word people. We love that we have such a vibrant community of indie bookstores here in DC. Wherever you are, go ahead and support your local indie bookstore. If you're here in the DC area, I recommend Loyalty Books. They're a local queer-owned bookstore, and we, support all of our locals. But Loyalty Books, I know, has this book in stock. And with that said, let me introduce our guest, because I'm so delighted that she's here tonight. Chloe O. Davis. She is a performer, a dancer, an actor, and as of 1 week ago, a published author. The book is called The Queen's English. The subtitle is The LGBTQIA plus Dictionary of Lingo and Colloquial Phrases. And it is gorgeous, gorgeously produced, a nice, thick artifact to hold in your hand. I'm not going to wave it around anymore because with my Zoom background, it's going in and out of focus. But I really, really highly recommend it. Chloe Davis, welcome to Planet Word. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
And congratulations on this tremendous accomplishment. I know it's been a long time coming.
Thank you, Rebecca. Absolutely. The Queen's English. And yes, it's the LGBTQIA plus Dictionary of Lingo and Colloquial Phrases. Maybe I can test you all if you know what all of those acronyms stand for. But yeah, it's my love child. And it's published by Clarkson Potter, their imprint of Penguin Random House. And February 2nd was its public release date, and just so excited that the world now gets to experience what I've been experiencing actually for over a decade. I've been working on this since 2006. And it's really special to me because working on this also was in tandem with me being a performer. I feel like there's something very special about being an artist and the community that we keep. And that is actually how, why I wrote it and how I got a chance to really research and understand the language that lives within our LGBTQI plus community.
Well, in the intro to the book, you tell the story of this moment when you were on a tour bus, I guess, and didn't totally understand what everybody was saying at the time. Can you tell that story for us?
Absolutely. So I danced with a company in Philadelphia, shout out to Philly, not too far from DC. It is a Black dance company, modern dance company called Philadanco. And we toured often for shows. We actually toured all over the US as well as internationally. So we spent a lot of time together. And there was always, I don't know if anyone's familiar with just being at the back of the bus. If you were rode the bus to school, or, the back of the bus is like where the cool people sit, it's just where we like to say where we kiki, or like where the tea is spilled. But what was happening is there were a lot of members of the company who identified as gay. And they also were part of the ballroom scene. And we'll talk about what the ballroom scene is. And so there are words being thrown around, maybe but like fierce and shade, over, come through, push through. So these words are being, used a lot. And as a member of the company, you eventually get them too and understand what their meaning is. But one time in particular, I heard this word snatched. And that is where it all started. And so a friend was, thought this was funny, because I was like, what does snatch mean? You're always, calling people snatched like it's a compliment. What is it? And I kind of had a clue, but, I just also wanted to just see. And then, he broke it down. He was like, well, snatched, honey. Snatch means the body is together. You are lean, you're sexy, you're perfect. Your body, your physique is excellent. And it was just funny because at first, I was like, what does that mean? And I was confused, but, once he broke it down, and it was just like, oh, this is funny. So then over time, you know, I would learn more words, literally. Like I was saying, read and beat over. And these actually are terms that are used within the Black gay community as well, but more so in ballroom. And if we understand a little bit about ballroom, the ballroom scene, Pose right now is a beautiful example of the ballroom scene in the 1980s. And there's this amazing documentary called Paris is Burning, which has received numerous of awards because of its documentation of a very beautiful and vibrant culture and community that grew out of being marginalized and racism and homophobia and transphobia. But what happened was we were together so often that anytime I would hear a word, you know, I would ask them like, oh, does it mean this? And when I would give the word, it would be a very academic definition because I'm a nerd. I mean, I am.
You're among friends. It's okay.
You know, I am. But it was funny. It was really funny. People would bust out laughing. They were like, oh my gosh, yes. Because, you know, we laugh because a lot of times when we define slang, I'm going to call it slang, we use slang. So it was the fact that, you know, when I'm asking what it is, they're using slang. So then I come back with this really academic Oxford, we call it Oxford Dictionary. And we laughed about it because it was just so good. You know, how, you know, it's interesting how you can take slang and give it, you know, I say academic, but, you know, scholarly appeal. And it became a game. But honestly, eventually I said, after about 50 terms in, I said, this is a full-fledged like language. I said, there needs to be a dictionary. And I was being facetious. I wasn't being true, but a friend was like, well, write it. And when you do, call it the Queen's English. And, you know,
Which
I was
is
like,
such a great title.
Yeah. And I was like, challenge, you know, but no, actually, because he said it's the language of all the queens. So I go back into the ballroom scene or the drag circuit. And the thing about it is queens, when we know about drag queens, you know, or we have femme queens, which is a term commonly used in the ballroom scene that identifies a transgender woman, or we have a butch queen, and that is also in the ballroom scene that identifies, you know, a cisgender male. So these are the queens, but also queen, you know, is a very honorable word that is used within, you know, the larger gay and queer community just to honor an honorific of someone. So that's why it is the language of the queen. So it's not just, you know, about ballroom culture or Black culture, you know, although it's heavily guarded in that, but it is about the celebration of all queens, you know, non-binary, lesbian, gay, intersex, asexual, you know, it is the celebration. And so that's why the Queen's English is truly a celebration of the diverse communities that really live within this umbrella, we like to say, called gay or queer culture. You know, it's not, what makes the Queen's English so beautiful is that its focus is to be inclusive. So meaning that it's not just gay male terms, but it's lesbian, and it's terms that non-binary, gender non-conforming, gender fluid individuals, you know, use commonly. And it's language that is also intersectional, right? When it comes to being Black and trans, or being Latinx and non-binary, or, you know, it's just all of these different identities that's celebrated within this dictionary.
I have this mental image of you like whipping a notebook out of your tights backstage. We're like, would you say that's a verb? You know?
Exactly. You know, it was so funny because then we enjoyed it so much that it would be like that. It's like, ooh, Chloe, ooh, when we get back on the bus, remind me to tell you this word. Or, ooh, Chloe, this word, define this. Okay, because it means this. So how would you define it? That was kind of the game that was happening, and it was a lot of fun. And so I want to talk about actually the journey with the dictionary. Yes, and so this was back in 2006 when, you know, I was a baby, you know, and I mean, I was in my 20s, but very young. But I like to say that this book and being an artist worked in tandem, because as I grew and evolved in my career as an artist, as a creative, as a dancer, and I would travel all over the country, and I would also have other spaces that and cultures, queer culture that I would be invited into, right? So Philadelphia was mostly Black, right? But then when I evolved into musical theater, it was very different. Then I joined a tour where it was predominantly white. And also, so then I started to learn language that came from a predominantly white gay male group, right? So then I learned about the animal kingdom, right? So I don't know if anyone's out there, you know, about the bears, the otters, you know, and then you'll have the twink, the twonk. So it's just, language is so evolving, and it's a celebration of identity. And it's just, it goes on and on. So just over time, people would just introduce me to their friends because they knew I was doing this dictionary, and they're like, oh, I have to introduce you to this friend. And then I will talk to that friend. And then that friend would say, oh, I have to introduce you to this friend. And that's how the language just continued to evolve. And I'm very proud to say there's over 800 terms that truly articulate, you know, identity, history, culture, and pride within our larger gay and queer community.
You know, at one point in the introduction, you quote someone saying, like, this is a language, we have this for ourselves. This is a language for us.
Mm-hmm.
And does it feel a little bit like you're revealing a secret code to people who aren't in the know?
So here's the thing. I feel like it's not about revealing, it's about education, and it's about celebration. First and foremost, it's about celebration. My reasoning for wanting to do the dictionary, of course, evolved because there is a true need for marginalized communities and those and individuals within these communities for our voices to be heard, to be understood, and to be respected. So more so, it's not about revealing a secret code, it's about affirming and empowering a language that has existed, and having the agency to say this is ours, and if you want to use it, this is how you use it. If you are supposed to use it, this is how you use it. But it's just about documentation. And it's funny, I joke around to say, when I was, you know, giving this academic or scholarly definition to words, but truth be told, within our society, that's what you have to do. Because if it's not given this scholarly nuance or documented, then it's not taken seriously. And I think that was why I was so passionate about doing this, is because I need you to take not just our language seriously, but I need you to take us and our identity and our pride and our culture seriously. You know, it's not about, you know, margin, like capitalizing and monetizing on our words and our styles. You know, it's really about respecting who we are. And that's why, you know, I decided to create this dictionary. It is about, you know, ownership, agency, celebration, and empowerment. But it's also a tool for those who are not within, you know, our community, for you to learn and also understand the words, you know, to communicate efficiently and effectively and with respect. And I know I hear this all the time from allies and even my friends, is that we just don't know. And so now it's like, okay, well, here's a tool where now you can know, you can educate yourself, you know, and more so, it's about having deeper conversations about identity, about sexual orientation, about, you know, the fluidness and vibrancy of identity. And also, you know, the layers that we are seeing right now, especially within our American, you know, society. You know, we have to talk about racism. We have to talk about marginalization. We have to talk about sexism and misogyny. These are conversations that need to be talked about. And the beautiful thing about the Queen's English is it gives you a tool to go in, to dive deep, to do that work yourself, but also to include people on that journey. Because that's what it was for me. You know, I didn't come out the womb knowing this language. You know, it was a beautiful journey for me to go deeper into myself and my identity, because I identify as bisexual, and it was because of my journey with this dictionary that I was given the agency. So I'm so excited for other people out there to find, you know, that type of affirmation and confidence in who they are through these words.
Well, also, I mean, from my point of view, coming from Planet Word, and you touched on this, what was so appealing to me when I just read the description of the book was elevating this language as just as valid as any other language, right?
That's
We take a descriptive, not a prescriptive view of language at Planet Word. Everybody gets to innovate with English. That's the really cool thing about English. We don't have some central agency keeping English pressed under glass in some preserved, perfect way. And, you know, nobody gets to say that one thing is proper and one thing is slang. It's all language. It's all wildly weird and interesting and constantly changing and beautiful and powerful and all of the things we celebrate in the museum. And it comes through so much in this book. First of all, its depth and length, but also it's really beautiful.
Thank
it's
you.
beautifully produced. And again, because of the Zoom background, you aren't going to see this, but, you know, amazing illustrations.
Yeah,
So
I'll share it too on mine.
Yeah, good. It's so colorful. It's so graphic. So tell me a little bit about the design process, because once, you know, taking on a dictionary is a big old project, and most dictionaries are not taken on with design in mind, right? They're just efficient.
You know, I think that's the artist in me. You know, that's that left brain that's just like, you know, go, go, go. I said, I'm creative, and I think it's fun to learn in a creative way. And most importantly, I wanted to celebrate the terms. So how can I celebrate the terms without it just being like, oh, it's a dictionary? You know, I mean, are people really gonna get into it because it's just a dictionary about gay and queer lingo? Maybe, but what was most important is how can I really bring the culture and all its beauty and diversity and dynamic and nuance, you know, in these pages. And so before I talk about the design, I want to just talk about how the terms are entered. So there's a term, of course, it's very traditional. So you have your term and you have your part of speech. You also have your definition or multiple definitions. But what is awesome is that there's also a usage example, and that kind of dives in, and you really hear, like, you can hear the nuance of how the word is used, because, you know, there's a difference of how I'm using it, you know, like snatch now, or, you know, snatch, the body is together, lean, you know, whatever, but versus like, ooh, that girl is snatch, she looking, you know, it's just it's a difference. And I wanted you know, you all to, I wanted my readers to hear that nuance. And the other part is that I wanted to, you know, give a synonym, right? And I like to have fun. So I use emojis because that's our culture. And it's like this emoji. And it's like, you know, one more info, think, and I give a synonym. And the fun part about it is the synonym should also connect immediately to the word. So even if you don't read the definition, then you'll see the synonym. It's like, I get it. The other two parts where I feel like are really important, and that's where a lot of research came in, was diving into the usage note. Now, the usage note tells you kind of the etymology of the word and what culture it originated from, or what culture or community commonly uses it. So for instance, you know, we talked about this a lot when we talk about the ballroom scene, and the ballroom scene comes from Black and Latinx, gay, trans, queer people and people of color. You know, that is the community. And so it'll say like this term originated in ballroom culture, but has been appropriated by mainstream culture, or has been appropriated by the larger LGBTQI plus community. Or for instance, if we talk about, oh, I love this, zucchini, right? Zucchini is commonly used in the asexual community. So you just kind of get a more clear idea of, you know, where these terms are coming from. Because it's so diverse, I wanted to make sure that I was highlighting the communities that use it or coined it or originated it. And then it also gives into information, which is very important. Like, is this word a stereotype? Is this word pejorative? Is this word, you know, derogatory? And that is also very important to know, that this word shouldn't be used flippantly. You know, you have to, maybe you're not supposed to use it, you know, but I want us to know the history of this word. Maybe it's even been reclaimed, right? So like words like queer, dyke, faggot, you know, these words were definitely once derogatory and came with quite malice. But over time, some members of the community have reappropriate the word and use it as a self-proclaimed identifier, you know, but still that doesn't mean that those outside of the community or those who, you know, have no relationship with that individual can use that word. So that's really important. And I think the last part is the did you know? And that goes in to kind of, you know, really connect the word with the community, or, you know, how it has evolved over time, or just more information about the history within the gay and queer spectrum. And so the illustrations. So again, I said I wanted it to be a coffee table book. I wanted it to be beautiful. I wanted it to be creative. I wanted it to be like me, you know, I wanted it to be fun. I wanted people, you know,
yeah,
you know, I'm creative. And I love storytelling. So I think that's why I really dive deep into this book, because I'm sharing people's stories as well as my own. So I connected with an amazing illustrator. So I use 4 different illustrators in this dictionary, one main one, and the other ones also gave a few contributions, but his name is Troy Lambert. And Troy and I really designed this together as far as the illustration. So with the illustration, we wanted, like, for, let's see if I can find Bear, but we wanted to tell the story of the community. We wanted to show the people and the faces. And let's see, I want to show you Bear. This is one of his most proud illustrations, but if you can kind of see it. But Bear, and we just wanted to kind of like show the beauty of people, you know, and it's through illustrations. There are pictures also in that, and those pictures are pictures that I have taken over the years when I go to particular landmarks, gay and queer landmarks around the US, and going to Pride events, or like the Staple, you know, going down in Miami, you know, 12th Street, or, you know, even 12th Street in Philadelphia, but just going to different places and documenting those places so I can share it in the dictionary. This is another favorite illustration. Her name is Sinead Benjamin. She's beautiful. She's a Black lesbian illustrator, and I love this one because a lot of people don't know, but Josephine Baker was bisexual, and she's like my bicon.
There's a great word on its own.
You know, there you go, you know, bicon. So, and it's not just about illustrations. It's also, I want to show you just the funness of color. So,
it's so colorful.
Yes. So, the designer Danielle from Clarkson Potter, she's amazing. We had a lot of fun with color, and I literally picked colors that I thought really represented the dictionary, and we use those colors to bring it to life. Another aspect, if you can kind of see, you see a pride flag there. So a lot of times we see pride flags and we think, you know, it's the Roy G. Biv, right? We think it's the 6-color block, but truthfully, there are so many pride flags. I'm going to show you this page. So this, to me, is what true pride looks like. These are a plethora of pride flags, you know, amongst things. You'll see the bear pride flag, lipstick, lesbian, transgender pride flag, also asexual, non-binary. But so throughout the dictionary, you'll see these pride flags. But I want to talk about the cover. These colors, particularly here, and you also see it on the spine. This flag was the very first pride flag. And Gilbert Baker in 1978, San Francisco. And he created this pride flag to really empower the community. He was actually challenged by Harvey Milk, you know, to make this pride flag. And so the reason why I wanted it to be on my cover is because this dictionary, like you said, includes history, identity, and pride. And this dictionary isn't just about words, it's really about the celebration of a culture and the history of the culture. And that it's a storybook. You know, it's a
It
dictionary, but
really is.
it's a storybook.
And I
Yeah.
love, when you talk about the history of where some of these words came from, you mentioned ballroom, that comes up a lot.
Hmm.
The other historical era that comes up a lot is the Harlem Renaissance.
Yes.
Why do you think those two cultural moments were so linguistically rich? Why do you think so much invention was going on in those times and places?
So, just to dive deep again, like, and I love this because we're going to talk about race. So people may feel uncomfortable or may not, but you're talking about racism. You're talking about a community who is marginalized. I like to say that language shapes culture because language articulates identity and experience that mainstream or white culture has not done yet, or did not do it in an efficient way, or did not do it in an empowering way. And so that's why, within the Black community, within Black culture, so much vibrant language is created because it is articulating our experience and our identities, because language has not been articulated in that way of honor and respect. So when we talk about the Harlem Renaissance, I love it because it was just as gay as it was Black. Langston Hughes, Countee Cullen, Alan Locke, Ma Rainey, Ethel Waters, Josephine Baker, these wonderful gay, bisexual, queer individuals were not just prolific and amazing and artistic, but they also identified within this gay or queer spectrum, right? And so I say the reason why this language was created, like in the life. So in the life is a term that is about a century old. It came from the Harlem Renaissance, and in the life is just somebody who is gay, right? Or living a life that is not straight. So you're in the life. And there were these amazing drag balls at the, which one? I think it's at the Hamilton Lounge and at the Savoy Ballroom. And this is where, Black, gay, queer, bisexual, lesbian people could come and really celebrate who they were. But what was happening is that the vibe, the social vibe was so vibrant and infectious that it invited everyone else to the scene, whether you were white, whether you were straight, but you wanted to be a part of that because of the music, because of the language, because of the freedom, the liberation. So, the reason why creativity burst is because there is a lack of. And I feel like in the Harlem Renaissance, in the community, not only was it surrounded by being artistic, it's funny because I like to say that, because I currently live in New York, and I like to say that I'm in this new age Harlem Renaissance because I think of my connection with my friends and how we vibe and how we create together. And I can only imagine that was also happening in the 1920s. But it's just this space that you have these creative minds that are together and they're making this mastermind, and it's just this experience, and it just becomes so excitable and interesting that other people want to jump onto it. So that's like the Harlem Renaissance, and there's more. That's like a whole nother conversation. But
Sure.
to just point it out, it really just comes from being able to articulate experiences that have not been articulated before. And again, the Harlem Renaissance existed because not being allowed in white spaces. So that is why you had this beautiful emerge of Black brilliant minds, because they were all together, creating amongst each other. So that's what happened. And also also with the ballroom scene that was in Harlem as well, but in the 70s, same thing, prejudice, racism, not being invited into white gay spaces, and so or not being treated, being more marginalized. So then, Black and also Latino or Latinx, individuals created their own space. So Crystal LaBeija, and it's this wonderful documentary that kind of gives you the real tea, if you want to say, but it's called The Queen and it's on Netflix. But Crystal LaBeija, it's at the end. It talks about, the drag circuit, the drag pageantry. And it's very white. But at the end, there's this 5 finalists. I think 3 are, drag queens of color, and, 2 are white. And the crown goes to the white drag queen. And Crystal LaBeija is just over it. She's just very much like, she's not beautiful. You know what I mean? This is fixed, and I'm tired of things being fixed. She wants her crown. And then I think that's what happens. You get tired. You just get tired of constantly having to prove yourselves and knowing that, you're just not going to win in this. So then you go and you create something else. And that's what happens. And truth be told, that is still what happens. I feel like I've had my share of, you know what? I'm just going to go create my own, I can even talk about the story with this dictionary. I'm so honored that Clarkson Potter and Penguin picked it up, because people were like, I don't see it. I don't understand it, but I believed in it. So I'm like, you know what? I'll just keep going elsewhere. I'll keep doing what I need to do because I believe in it. And I think that is just kind of this story of being marginalized, a story of not being normal, or what is considered heteronormal, right? It's always this way of not being invited into the space. So it's like, what do you have to do? If you're not invited to the space, you have to create your own. And that's why language is created, whether you're Black, you're white, you're Asian, you're trans, you're non-binary, you're lesbian, you're gay. You create something that empowers you, that affirms you.
We've got a question, got a couple questions. Rachel asks, in the making of this dictionary, did you run into terms that are seen differently by different communities?
Oh, absolutely. So that's a great question. Thank you. So that the reason why so much research has been done is because I couldn't just go to one person and get, what they thought. I had to constantly cross-reference. And that's how I knew that this is how it should be defined. When I kept hearing over and over this neutral space, like, what is the nucleus of this word? Like what's the common denominator? What's happening? And when I would hear that, then I'm like, this is it. This is how we should define it. So first and foremost, when terms were even defined, it's because I just continue to hear a pattern of the same thing. Now, just like any dictionary, or any other word, there is more than one way to use the word. And so I honored the several ways words are used, and I just had different definitions for those words. And I would, of course, label it like what is more common than the next. So just like a traditional dictionary, it does the same thing. So I'm hoping that I was able to articulate most of the experiences of and how the words were used. But if I didn't, that does not mean that that definition is not valid, because it absolutely is.
Lindsay asks, what was the research process like? How much came from individuals and how versus academic or published resources?
2006, that's a long time. And I'm really proud to say that most of this came from just sitting with people, and I think because it was created in that way, it was created because of conversation. And, I have this dedication in the front of my dictionary because I'm thanking all of them, the many thousands probably of people that I have encountered, strangers, friends, that really poured into me, their identity, their celebration, their trauma, their challenges. And so these terms really come from love. It comes from like the heartbeat of the community, because it's like, if I was a grassroots organization, I was on my feet, like, because I want to hear it. It's so beautiful and organic and heartwarming to just hear someone tell their story.
Yeah.
And I feel really honored that I was able to share. So most of this definitely comes from, individuals that I personally talked to. Now, others, especially I want to say around 2015. So that's a long time before I was really able to get other resources. So around 2015, then I was able to find more articles that, touched on, LGBTQIA plus language and history. so then I was able to kind of pull from that. But I think that what makes this book so strong is because it comes from the words of those that, truly were involved and embodied these, this identity, this lifestyle, these words, this experience.
Well, you must also sometimes feel like it's never done, right? I mean, from 2006 to now, even. So we had somebody asking about being a cis ally and can she use queen herself? And in
Yeah.
2006, no one was using cis, right?
Ex-
Somebody else is asking about using they as a singular pronoun and
yeah.
is struggling with that usage. No one was
So
doing that in 2006.
that's right. And so you see the body and the plethora of words that continue to evolve and grow. So it's never done. So that's why it just has to be another edition.
Right.
But I think after a while, my editor was like, all right, Chloe, like, we're done. No more. Because I'm like, I have another. But I'm going to see if I can try to find my pronoun spread. So I want to talk, yes, here it is. I want to talk a little bit too. So there's terms, of course, in the dictionary, but there are also these interstitial spreads. So these spreads articulate like the people, the places, the things that have really moved, gay and queer language forward. So we know about Stonewall. We talked about the Harlem Renaissance. We talked about ballroom. There's also, of course, marriage equality, but we also talk about gays in the military. We talk about I love this one. It's called the genderbread person. I love it because it's a breakdown that really articulates identity, right? So identity is not just about your sexual anatomy, identity encompasses, your identity, how you mentally feel about yourself, how you express that, how you feel about yourself, who you are attracted to, who you're not attracted to, if there's attraction at all. And then there's also your sexual anatomy. So it gives you this breakdown to understand the differences, because for some reason, we haven't been taught just yet to understand that they all work on their own. They don't have to work together. Just because someone was assigned female at birth or assigned male at birth doesn't mean that they are male or they are female. Right. So when we talk about cisgender versus transgender, so if somebody was AFAB, assigned female at birth, and they identify as also a woman, then that is someone who is cisgender. If someone was assigned male at birth, but does not identify with that masculinity or being a male or man, then that is called transgender. So, these are things that I think are important for us to understand so that we can really empower each other. I think it's just lack of understanding. So that's why I was very adamant about teaching it in a way that was basic,
Mm-hmm.
I know there are so many individuals out there who identify within the gay and queer spectrum and kind of like, oh, I know this. But the truth of the matter is we all don't know this. And that's how I wanted to create this book. I wanted to create it where we don't know anything. And so I'm going to include all of those details. So I love this page. It's, if we can kind of see it, it's pronouns and it's singular pronouns. So yes, we talked about they, them, but they, them is not the only singular pronoun. Of course, we have he and we have she, we have they, we have ze. We have ye. I mean, there's so many. And I know because we are in a heteronormative society that it feels very odd for, us to use they, but this is just something that we have to learn to do, because we are, we want to make sure that we are being respectful and inclusive to, identity. And identity is not just binary. It's not just male, female. It's not just woman, man. Those are binaries, and that's very limiting.
Well, this is also where the descriptive, not prescriptive language comes in. It actually, the singular they has been around for hundreds of years. And people who feel like it's wrong in some way, that it's a, subject verb agreement problem, just need to get over the concept of wrong, right? Language evolves.
Yeah.
We have a bunch of people asking you what your favorite word is. I can't imagine you can choose one. I have to say, looking through it, one of the things
There's
I
so
loved,
many.
I loved all the education, I loved all the empowerment, but I also loved how clever so many of these words are. You know, they're
Mhm.
funny.
Mhm.
They're
Yeah.
they do a lot of work in a couple of phrases, you know, and
Yeah.
it's just that I feel like there's something for everyone. Do you want to take a stab at what your favorite is or
You
series of
know,
favorites?
I love, there's something on my website, and definitely visit thequeensenglishus.com. Um, and also follow us on Instagram at the Queen's English US. But I love this this part. I was like, in our community, we have daddies, the kids, femme queens, tops, bottoms, kinksters, butches, femmes, imbies, otters, gabies, zucchinis, queens, and many, many more. So I just love that because it's like, what? Go get your dictionary.
Right, exactly. Paul asks, you mentioned that certain words formerly derogatory have been incorporated into communities for empowerment. What do you believe, if any, to be the limit to that reappropriation of words? Could certain words be reclaimed by a variety of groups?
You know, that is an interesting question. And I want to see how to answer this because it's so it's so vast. But what I want to articulate is that when it comes to language and when it comes to identity and how someone self-identifies, then it's important for us to listen. It's important for us to respect that. And it's also important for us to not give labels to people who have not articulated those labels for ourselves. So I think that's
Mhm.
first and foremost. Then, when it comes to usage of language, um, I have to be very clear that just because this is a dictionary and it is this celebration of language of the gay and queer community, doesn't mean that if you are not part of the community that you can use it freely, and that you take ownership of it without giving it the respect, that it's supposed to have. So I think we just have to be careful and be mindful that this is a case by case basis. But I think the most important rules, if I were to give rules, is that when someone identifies as that and they have told you this is how they identify, then it is our duty to respect that identity and identify them as what they have articulated. That's first and foremost. Then, secondly, is that we can't decide to use terms and words just because it feels good to us. We have to understand that some individuals may not feel comfortable with certain words. So that's why it's important for us to learn them, but doesn't necessarily mean we just use them. I mean, I think there is a place and time for that. And again, when I was talking about, like dyke and queer, faggot, sissy, queer is different because queer now, especially because of this younger generation, have taken, this word, and it truly articulates their experience of being queer, of just not being heteronormative, and that articulates that experience. So that's a little different. But for someone to say like dyke, that could be derogatory. And we have to be very careful. Just, you can't just say that to someone because that is still derogatory. Now, if friends are using it amongst each other with like as play, then that's their prerogative. You know what I mean? If they actually identify as lesbian, that is their prerogative, that is their language that has been reclaimed. But someone outside that community, then you just can't use it. So I think it's about just diving into the words and understanding them. It's not about that you have permission to use them. It's just about understanding them more so. There are words that are, of course, yes, but there are words that it's like, no, like for instance, in the transgender community, there's words like clock and stealth and passing. And these are words that articulate passing, like that means someone who is transgender but looks cisgender. They are passing as that. Now, that's a word that can be used within the transgender community amongst each other, like, oh, she's passing, but that can be very derogatory if someone who is not in that community uses that to someone. Or someone who's stealth, that's someone who is transgender but um, does not articulate that experience publicly, that they want to be looked at as cisgender. And so telling someone that they're stealth then that is also derogatory. So I think it's really more so about understanding, just understanding. Yeah.
Masha asks, did working on this dictionary change your perspective on any aspects of queerness?
Oh my gosh, yes. I advocate for the diversity and spectrum of human identity. I just advocate for it because, you know, so yes, if I were to talk about my layers, I like to say my layers, my identity. You see me, I'm Black, I'm a woman. I've told you that I'm bisexual. So these are my layers. So I can write from those layers. But to write this dictionary, I had to write beyond those layers. I had to open myself up and put myself in another body and another mind to feel what that is. So that way I can write and empower that identity. So when I say that I advocate for the spectrum of identity and for it to be empowered and respected, I do. Someone who is bigender, someone who is pansexual, someone who is gender fluid, someone who is agender. I advocate for that because I want them to feel that their identity is valid, is real, and empowered. So I think that's the biggest thing. Like, my scope of understanding the truth of identity has just expanded beyond what I can imagine, but it's just such a beautiful experience. And I think it is my duty now to help others expand as well.
This is an interesting question. Christine asks, do you think one day there will be an umbrella term to cover LGBTQIA+?
So I have this joke. You have to get the dictionary though. But there's this really cool joke that I put in the introduction. But I said, let's celebrate our LGBTQIA plus A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Then I do the whole alphabet. And there's a great usage term in there for like LGB. It's like, should we say LGBT? I mean LGBTQ. I mean LGBTQIA. Okay, never mind. I think it's about everyone wanting to feel included, and so that's why we continue to add these acronyms. So it was LGBT, and then of course GLAAD in their glossary, they added the Q. I think it was in 2016, but they added the Q queer to help kind of round off or give that umbrella representation for those who are not just LGBT. And I, included LGBTQIA. So I is intersex, A is asexual, plus it gives all the other non-heteronormative identities also their recognition. So I don't know if it's going to be an umbrella term. I think what could possibly happen is that people can just be respected for what they identify. So instead of it having to be all inclusive, sometimes we don't have to be all inclusive. Sometimes it's more powerful just to identify what it is. Like, there's power in just being a lesbian. There's an experience with just that. There's power in being non-binary and just that experience in that. Just like there's power
in seeing the huge range of alphabet soup, right? It just goes to show you what a spectrum of identities are there.
Yes, exactly. But I want to say too, it's not about making things an umbrella. Like, for instance, we are now saying, a lot like people of color. But people of color is so vast. Like, my experience as a Black person is very different from someone who's Asian. But yet we are people of color, but our experiences are different. So I think that's also, even though I'm showing, this, I'm celebrating this entire community, what I'm really doing is going inside of the community and I'm liberating all of these sub communities, to show that we need to validate that. So I guess I'm opposite. Instead of it being an umbrella term that makes everybody fit in, I want to retract. I want people to look at the community for what it is, or look at this sub community for what it is.
That leads me to a question from another guest who says, I imagine you found a bunch of subcultures, regional, Latinx, that use terms like in Spanish or in Spanglish. Mm-hmm. How did you treat that?
I have a really great example in the book for Latinx. And I definitely had friends help me with my Spanglish, but there are terms that are regional. And for instance, like down south, in the Black community, Black gay community, there's J setting, right? But up north, it was the ballroom scene. Or there's also there's regional terms, but I think what I did more so, instead of about regional, I did it more specific to the community. I think it was more of that instead of regional, because what was great was that I was finding these words that cross regions. And so that's when I was like, aha, this is it. Like when I was in LA, but then I can go down to Houston and I hear the same word. I'm like, aha, that's it. You know what I mean? So that's actually what I pulled from, but there are some things I know, like boots, that's like a DC term. If you ever heard of that, back boots or boots, I learned that from like the DC region. But yeah, I think it wasn't necessarily about regional terms that I was looking for. I was looking for what was used amongst all of us, or the scope of the US.
Yeah. And of course, again, constantly changing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not just new words being coined, but shading meanings of words that are already out in the lexicon.
Right.
Rachel says, was the dictionary compiled with international input, or is it meant to represent the community in the US?
Well, I'm glad you asked. This particular dictionary that looks like this with this jacket is for the US of A. This is ours. And I purposely did that because I was finding words, particularly like from the UK, but I wanted to focus just on, our history and our LGBTQIA plus language. But there is a UK version that is coming out in June of 2021.
Oh, how exciting.
And yes, so I also worked with a publisher, Square Peg. They're with Vintage Publishers, and the Queen's English will be international and make its way over the pond to the UK. And so I'm actually just finished up that research of being able to articulate the LGBTQIA plus UK experience.
Is it substantially different linguistically?
Well, what we did with this one particularly, we worked on the spread. So a spread that talks about marriage equality, a spread that talks about HIV and AIDS. It's from the UK experience. But I think what makes this great is that these words are also used in the UK. So that's what was exciting. So it's sometimes I have to actually, put that this term originated in the American blah, 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 community, because it's international. And I want to make sure that we are credited.
I'm going to ask my wonderful colleague, Caitlin, who's moderating the chat, to repost the bookshop.org link in the chat, because we've had a couple of people asking about where to get it, because you are such a great evangelist for your own book. And let me just say, for anyone who missed it at the top, the bookshop.org link that Caitlin's putting in the chat, a percentage of that goes to Planet Word. So if you want to support Planet Word that way, we'd love for you to do that. We also are huge supporters of our local indie bookstores here in DC. I want to shout out Loyalty Books. There's a million great indie bookstores in DC. We are spoiled for choice. Choose your favorite. I'm specifically recommending Loyalty just because they're queer-owned and I love them over there, and it feels like a nice match for this particular book.
Thank you.
We are almost out of time, sadly, but I actually want to quote yourself to yourself, which is probably a little bit terrifying. Where you talk about in the introduction to the book that you want to see this as a jumping off point, right? A place to start conversation. This can't possibly be a definitive work because language changes so fast and culture changes so fast, but you hope that it is actually the beginning of something, not the final end of something. Mm-hmm. What do you hope this is sparking?
It's funny. So I got a chance to do my book signing at Barnes & Noble Union Square in New York. And I was literally looking out the window at all the snow that was coming down. But I said, this is the beginning, you know, it's the beginning because now this book has wings and can go places that I only imagined, and change people and evolve people. And that's what makes me really happy. But I think this is finally that tool and resource that will help all of us understand each other more, because it's not just about, and I keep pressing this, it's not just about LGBTQI plus culture and identity, it's about human identity. You know, I said that it was my hope that it doesn't matter if you identify within the community or not, that, you know, there's at least 2 words in there that you felt like, you know, you relate with. And I think it's just a way for us to dive deeper into empowering each other, seeing each other. I think we're in this environment right now, especially in the US, where our eyes are open. You know, we're open to see right and wrong. They're open to understand white privilege and marginalization and racism and misogyny and transphobia. Like, our eyes are open. So now here's a tool for us to open them up more and learn, and for us to evolve and be a better place. I think that's just what it is. I just want us to evolve and, you know, support each other.
Well, Chloe Davis, it has been an absolute treat to spend an hour with you. I love the book. I hope you are so, so proud of it.
Thank you.
And I love that you are hearing rumors of Broadway coming back sometime soon, so you can be back performing. That would be wonderful as well. But there's lots of love for you in this chat and Q&A. Lots of people
thank
so
you.
excited to hear from you and to read the book. So it's been a privilege. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. And thank you all for, you know, supporting me and coming out and hearing me. And I just, you know, ask that you just keep sharing, keep sharing. It's a wonderful gift book. It's beautiful. When you get your copy,
really
make sure you know, take a picture and tag us at the Queen's English US. That's so much fun. People sending their pictures with their books.
Excellent. And thank you all for being here and for your support of Planet Word. If you don't get our newsletter to find out about the rest of our programs, please go to planetwordmuseum.org and subscribe. And thank you all for being here tonight. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.